Hello, I'm Richard with EV4U Custom Conversions. And I know it's been a while since we've done a video. I just have been busy doing lots of different things, but we're back. And today's video is going to be a little different and, well, not a lot different. We're going to talk about batteries, loads, and solar. And the reason we're going to be discussing those items is that a couple of the most common questions you hear are how many batteries do I need and how much solar do I need? Now, we're mainly known for converting internal combustion vehicles to electric, which we've been doing since 2008. But we also do RV power systems, solar systems, and off-grid power systems. So those are questions that we receive a lot of, and recently we just did a cargo trailer, travel trailer conversion, converting an 8-foot by 16-foot cargo trailer to a self-contained all-electric RV. And so we're going to, in the future, bring you some real-world reports based on the performance of, those items, the battery packs, the solar, versus the loads that we have. So, back to our two questions, which are really, one and the same. You want to know how many batteries I need or how much solar do I need? Well, those really aren't the first questions that need to be answered. The first question you need to answer is, what are my loads? What do you want to power with the battery pack? And, what's that solar's requirements? What do what's the size of the battery pack and what are the loads that you want to replenish using solar input? So today, in an overview style, we're not going to go deep into solar layouts. We're not going to go real deep into battery storage and loads, but we're going to talk about them in enough depth that you would know why you make certain decisions and how to make certain decisions. So like I said, you start off with the loads. What are my battery requirements? Well, I'm going to use an RV kind of situation for example. And so you can go from just wanting to power some lights and a water pump, just the real basics, a fan for a propane heater, that kind of thing, to what we have, which is an all-electric setup that we're powering heater, air conditioner, fans, inductive cooktop, microwave oven, electric hot water heater, 3,000 watt inverter, on and on. All of our needs electrically are being met by a battery system. So you need to go through and calculate what your loads are. And there's two figures that you'll need to know. The first figure you'll need to know is the power requirement. So, how many watts does that device pull? How much power does it demand from your battery pack? And the other is time. Those are the two variables in this. How much energy and for how long? And that will give you watt hours. And I just grabbed a new pen and it's it's worse than the, watt hours. Okay, that's what we're wanting to calculate. And so sometimes that's difficult to calculate. And I'll give you, for instance, a refrigerator. In our trailer, we've got a separate freezer and a separate refrigerator, okay? And the freezer will probably have more run time than the refrigerator because it's maintaining a lower temperature. And so it's real hard to estimate what that run time is going to be unless you have some kind of historical record, you know. And there's variables, you know, what's the thermal density in there, what are the temperatures you're trying to maintain, and what's the ambient temperature that you're trying to, you know, deal with. So lots of variables, but that's what you're going to need to figure out. There are some things that are easy to figure out because they're going to be a flat line, you know, constant draw, and for a constant period of time. For instance, you have lights on, and they're on for a certain period of time, okay? So back so we can, you know, do some, not necessarily calculation, but as an example, I'm going to tell you what I figured I need for that trailer conversion, and this is per day, okay? So I'm estimating that we're going to need 5,000 to 7,000 watts per day. And that's because I really don't know how long, you know, like I said, the refrigerator and freezer are going to run. I have an idea how much, you know, the cooktop might run on average, not on a specific day necessarily, depending on what's being cooked. Same way with the microwave. I've got, you know, parameters. Hot water heater, which is our biggest draw, it's 1,400 watts. And I'm figuring an hour a day, but I don't know. So we're going to, you know, do dishes and showers all in the same time of day so that we heat the hot water heater up. You do the dishes, you wait for it to kick off again, you take a shower, you wait for it to kick off again, and then once you're finished that last shower, you just turn it off. And you'll maintain some hot water, but it may not be as hot as you wanted for doing dishes, let's say. So you'll probably have to turn it on the next day, that kind of thing. So some variables in there that I don't have an exact answer for. I don't know what the, you know, I mean, I've done some measuring, I kind of have an idea, but what I don't know is what our consumption is going to be for doing the dishes. I know what the cycle time is, I know how long it takes to go from what the temperature's been in the shop to, you know, bring it up to the thermostatic setting on the water heater, and I know how long, if I turn that on and I get it to cycle again, how long it takes to recoup. But that's not based on, you know, what's the draw going to be when you're taking a shower. Those are things I don't have an exact number on yet, but I will because I keep good notes. But anyway, this is what I'm shooting for, and it's kind of high because, like I said, this is an all-electric setup that 2 people will be living in. So your usage may be less. Now, if you're in a great big fifth wheel, like we used to have a 38-foot fifth wheel with 4 slides, it was nearly 400 square feet of space. This number would be very low. A lot more area to heat and cool and so forth. It's one of the reasons why we went with this small trailer. Everything's more manageable. Where we can take it's more manageable. Instead of having a 54-foot long rig, you know, the truck and trailer now weigh less than what the fifth wheel alone weighed before. So lots of reasons why I wanted to go this direction and do some experimentation. So if this is my requirements, I can now start thinking about these 2 things. But this is just a shot in the dark if you don't know what you have to, you know, meet here. So you need to know what your loads are before you calculate your battery requirements and your solar requirements. So, you can have a battery system now that is, say 6,000 watt hours. Okay, so that could give you, 1 watt for 6,000 hours, or it can give you, 6,000 for one. You can do the math. But this would mean that I had enough storage to provide 1 day's worth of energy. Now what I have on the trailer is I actually have 3 battery systems, and they are, the reason for that is, and it's a 12 volt system, and if you want I can go further into batteries and solar stuff, but ideally in a higher demand usage, if you're just running some lights and a water pump, a few little things like that, a 12 volt system is fine. But ideally what I would run with mine would be a 48 volt system. It takes up less space, it's lighter, it's less expensive, it's more efficient, on and on and on and on. The reason I didn't do that is I would have had to buy that system from scratch, build it from scratch. I already had all these components that were 12 volt in nature. So I took 3 different battery setups I had, and they're configured in 12 volts because the inverter I have and the charger and so forth, everything was 12 volts. So instead of buying those things new, I just used them in this less efficient manner. But what I have in the big picture is I have approximately 16,000 watt hours of capacity. Now, one of the things that people get confused with, and like I said, I don't want to go too deep into these things, but there's a few basics you need to understand. And that is, with batteries, it's going to depend on the chemistry you're using also. So, there's a difference between your total capacity and your usable capacity. And the difference comes when we start talking about the chemistry. So if you have 16,000 watt hours of lead acid total capacity, the usable capacity, the capacity that's able to provide for your loads, it's only going to be half of that. Only 50% of the rated capacity of lead acid is usable. Lithium iron phosphate, it's going to be 80%. Now a lot of if you're building your own lithium iron phosphate battery pack versus something like Battleborn SOKs or 1,000 other names out there now, where it's a battery that's a 12 volt battery that they've built. Those a lot of times, if they say 100 amp hours on there, it will be 100 amp hours, because they don't want you to realize that that they're going to rate it what it actually is. They're going to rate it at the usable, because if they didn't, and it was 100 amp hour cells in there making up, 4 of those in series make up that 12 volt battery, you'd only have 80 amp hours usable, people would be complaining. So typically on those prepackaged batteries, they're going to be, the usable will be what's stated. But anyway, like a lot of rabbit holes we could go down. we won't. But just know that there's a difference between, you know, total capacity and usable capacity. Make sure that when you're calculating, you know, these kind of things or relating these things, that you're relating the usable capacity. Otherwise, you're not going to be talking apples and apples here, are you? The other thing that I hear a lot of that I think there needs to be a little clarity, and that is amp hours. Somebody said, well, I've got a 200 amp hour system. Okay. I'm guessing by default they're talking about 200 amp hours at 12 volts. But if you don't say that, you really don't know. They could have a 24 volt system. And if you have 200 amp hours at 24 volts, so if you have, you know, 12 volt, 200 amp hour, or you have a 24 volt, 200 amp hour, or a 48 volt at 200 amp hour. Well, you guessed it. Your usable capacity is going to be greatly different between those three. So if you had a 12 volt, 200 amp hour system, you'd have 2,400 watt hours of energy. 24, you'd have 4,800, 48 volt. So you can see the amp hours, that's just how the battery is rated. The storage capacity of the battery is so many amp hours at 12 volts, or 24 volts, or 48 volts, or whatever it might be. Okay? And again, this is if that 200 amp hours is usable. If this is a 200 amp hour 12 volt lead acid battery, which you don't see too many of those, they're usually 12 volts, are usually like 130 amp hours. Anyway, it would be half of that, because with lead acid, only 50% is usable. So anyway, kind of back to the big picture, the reason for going with the larger battery pack, if I have this much requirement a day, so let's say, you know, there's no solar input and everything, it's a you know, I'm just running off my battery pack, so I'm going to be a little more conservative. Well, basically, if I'm using 5,000 watts per day, with 16,000 watt hours available, actually that doesn't need to be there, then I could go 3 days. And that would be with zero solar input, or outside input. I could go 3 days just on those batteries. Now, you know, you might be in a situation where, hey, I want to be able to go, you know, 5 days or 7 days. Well, then you're going to want to have a larger battery pack. And so you know, why did I go with this size? Because that's what I had laying around. In an earlier video in regards to the trailer build, I showed I've got a pack that is 4 12 volt 100 amp hour Battleborn batteries. That's my primary one that I'm going to run off first. Secondary one that I'll run off, I've got 2 12 volt 206 amp hour SOK batteries. And then the third one I have is a custom built one that has 8 180 amp hour CALB cells in it. And so 4 and 4 are in series. So I got 2 sets of 4 in series, and those 2 sets are in parallel. So basically I got, you know, 360 amp hours at 12 volts for my third pack. And then the EcoFlow Wave 2 that we're using for heating and AC it has its own battery pack. And so, like I said, all those things combined take me to about 16,500 watts actually, watt hours. So that's what I have in the trailer. Now, what size solar are you going to use? Again, all these things are interrelated. So my solar for this setup, I have 800 watts on the roof of the trailer because that's what I had. I had 800 watts that I used as they were standalone panels before, and I had them on mounts that they had two different settings depending on which way you twisted this, so it changed the inclination. So basically between, the shoulder seasons and summer, you have different angles. Well, anyway, these are roof mounted, so they're flat. I got 800 watts. And then we have what I've always called our solar array, that we've seen it in the Volkswagen Doka, and it's 1600 watts. It's a collapsible setup, and so you have 8 200 watt panels, and so there's 2 panels that fit in the bed of the truck, and then there's a set of 2 that come out, telescope out one side, another set of 2 go out the other side, and a set of 2 that go out the end, for a total of 8 panels. And those 8 panels provide 1600 watts max. So combined, I have 2400 watts of solar. Now there's a lot of stuff I could go into with solar. One is, how do you have the panels configured? And that's going to be based on the parameters of your solar charge controllers, so forth. So in this case, I already had one solar charge controller and so forth. Actually, I have more than one, but the others I had were set up for the original Doka setup, which is a 24 volt system. And so that solar charge controller wasn't going to be compatible with this new system that was going to be operating at 12 volts. So I've got 2 solar charge controllers. One for the array that's on the roof of the trailer, and one for the bed of the truck. And so the one on the trailer, of course, will be operated all the time, so you're driving down the road, sunny day, you're going to have some solar input. The truck doesn't until you deploy it. So only when you're parked somewhere. So here's the thing. When you're driving down the road, the trailer's really not consuming much of this. So you're going to be doing okay with just what's on the roof, right? It should keep you topped off. But when you're set up someplace, or you get someplace and you're cooking or you're heating and cooling it or whatever, when you start having your loads, you're going to be running off your battery. If you get somewhere in the afternoon or evening, you're not going to have as much time for solar, but you're going to be running off battery. That's your buffer. But what we have here, here's my rule of thumb. Maximum 2400 watts. You're very seldom, if ever, going to see that. My rule of thumb is figure 50%. So at 50%, we're talking about 1200 watts. Okay? And depending on where you are, how long are you going to be able to put that out? So again, mainly being in the western United States, in most of our travels, I'm going to just estimate, use the figure of 5 hours. Oops. 5 hours per day. Okay, so 5 hours. My handwriting on one of these dry erase boards is atrocious. Not that it's all that good on a piece of paper either. But anyway, 5 hours at 1200 watts. What does that give you? That gives you 6,000 watts. And the 6,000 is right in the middle of what I would want. So this kind of gives me kind of a net zero setup to where I'm not, producing too much and I'm not producing too little. But again, this is all theoretical at this point. We're going to have to go see where those places you're traveling to. So when you're in the Northwest, you're going to be getting less solar input than you will if you're in the Southwest. Okay? Early spring, late fall, less than in the middle of the summer. So there's lots of variables. And here's one variable that you can, have some effect on. Instead of running the heater as much, maybe you put a sweatshirt on. Whatever. There are some things that you could cut back on, and there will be some things that you just can't or won't cut back on. So you're going to have to find what mates all these things together. And so this is what does it. So, this allows me to, have a buffer so that days I don't make that much solar, hey, I can make it up. There will be days, nice, clear, sunny day, boom. I may be putting out more than this, which allows me to top that off. But we're going to see in real life, and I'll let you know, and I'll give you the exact numbers and stuff, and we'll see how that all works. Another way to portray all this is think of the battery as a tank. And we have, our water in there, and we have our load right here, and that's everything flowing out, whatever it is, whatever rate that is. And then we have, our solar would be an input coming in here. If we're not putting any in and we're only taking out, this is going to drop. This is our battery. And by the same token, if we have some coming in and we're not having any going out, this is going to rise. It's that simple. So what you want to do is you want to match these two as best you can. And then, like I said, you want to choose how long, if you don't have this, how long you want to be able to maintain this, the output. So mine just turned out, like I said, I just going the least expensive route using components that I had. So using batteries that I had, using solar charge controllers I had, using the inverter and charger that I had. That's how my system turned out. That was engineered around those items. Now, two other things. We were talking about solar input. Well, I had just mentioned I got a charger. So the charger is powered by, shore power, the grid, whatever you want to call it. And that input can be the grid. It can be some other, source that provides 120 volts AC, and it's a 30 amp input. But I also have a little gasoline powered inverter that I carry in the bed of the truck. And so that, if I'm looking like we're going to have a lot of days of poor solar, to maintain this, I can run that. And it's a 2,000 watt. So 2,000 watts, 3 hours a day, that basically replicates that. And that's less than a gallon of gas a day to do that. So with a gallon in the tank and an extra 5, basically you can I can go for over a week on just the generator, if need be. The goal, hopefully, is to never use that and only use solar to maintain this, to provide for this. And I hope that's clear. So if you have any questions about any of these, leave a comment, or you can email us, which is the preferred method, because we don't always look at the comments. So info@ev4unow.com. That's the preferred method of questions and comments. But you can leave them with this video if you'd like. We'll try to stay up on those things. The other thing I want to mention before I go is, if you want more information about batteries or solar systems, like I said, batteries, depending on how you configure them, how many you're going to put in series, how many you're going to put in parallel to get desired outputs. Same way with solar. What I have on the roof, I said I have 800 watts up there, and so I have 8 100-watt panels. 4 of them are in series, so I have 2 series strings of 4 panels, and they're paralleled and they go in. And there's reasons for doing things a certain way. So I want a certain voltage, and your solar charge controller is going to be, what's going to set those parameters. And but the higher the voltage I have, the better that MPPT solar charge controller can provide for a good current output. And again, we're talking about power. It's all about power. Power requirements, power storage, power input. And what's power? Power is volts times amps. Volts times amps gives you the power, watts. And so there's better ways to configure things. There's more than one way to do it, but there's better, good, better, best kind of thing. And so, and that would be right here. Good, better, best. And I've run all 4 of those, but in this particular case, we're running this one, and that's just because those are the items that I had laying around, available, that I could steal for this trailer project. And that's what we did. And if you want us to, cover any topic regarding electric conversions or solar and battery powered off-grid systems, let me know. Happy to shed some more light on those topics and be specific. People a lot of times they ask these broad questions. It's like, I don't know where to begin. I'm not going to type a response for that kind of thing. And so that's how the video started way back in 2010. I think we started doing videos. It was just an efficient way to respond to individuals' questions. So, but still, in order to keep these videos from being too long, we try to address specific questions. This was kind of a broad one. And so I'm actually going to post this video twice, because I'll put one under the heading of how many batteries do I need, and the other one under how much solar do I need, because those are the two questions we get, but they have the same answer. And so you want someone to see, how many batteries do I need, and this is their question, and they ignore that. So I'll put the video up twice under both headings. So if you watch to the end, you'll know what's going on. If you didn't watch to this point, you're like, he uploaded that video twice. He's starting to really lose it. And maybe I am. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope I see you next time. Have a great day.